Heselschwerdt, start off since it's fresh in my mind, TBA. Things I want to change, basically I don't really want to be the president of TBA, but I want the TBA to change. Howard Kerr is actually running too. If he is actually on the ballot, I'm going to back off because both of us are good friends and he actually wants the exact same things I want with the TBA to change. I don't want to be president. All I want is the TBA can be so much more. They can help out the local clubs a lot more. They can, you know, last year they voted on cutting the education fund and the Hive grant funds. You know, we don't need to cut that.
Yes.
We need more money and more support for our local clubs. We need to educate. We need to have a conference in each region, one in the west, one in the middle, and one in the east. That's why I started up the Honey Convention. If you guys don't know about that, it's in Knoxville, Tennessee. You know, we need to push education. We need to help out Jennifer Struda, the new PhD up here at University of Tennessee. It's her first year, so I'm kind of leaving her alone with a lot of other people are, but she needs our support. She needs to change the master beekeeping course a little bit if possible. Our master beekeeping course here in Tennessee is horrible. It's almost a joke compared to other states. If you've ever been to it, it's basically you show up and it's basically a beginning course that most of the clubs can put on. You go to other states and there is a test when you get done to make sure you actually learned it. There's much more information flowing through it. They have different stages. You know, we need to be able to compete with those other states. If you look at nationally, we lost 74-point-something% of our bees last year. Previous year, 72% of our bees. We lose almost the most bees in the United States every year. I think that goes back to education. You know, if we are educated as individuals, we can make a better decision on what our hive is doing. And like tonight, this is going to be the most boring lecture on pests and diseases, and you don't have bees yet, please, when you get done listening to this, get bees anyways. That's my disclaimer. This scares off a lot of people. If you see this the first thing, you get scared with all these things, but it's like when you have a child. If you knew all the diseases and birth defects and everything out there, you wouldn't have a kid. You know, but you still want to have a kid, and same thing, you should still have bees. This is just the bad stuff in beekeeping. Most of the stuff you probably won't see. There will be some things that you will see, and there are some things that you have to do. The Honey Convention is March 20 and 21st of 2020. We do live install of bees, so if you haven't had bees, you can come there. I'm inside the tent with a bee suit on. Everybody else is outside the tent without bee suits on.
And
I install bees.
March 21st, you said?
20 and 21st, it's Friday and Saturday. And there's 25 to 27 speakers every year, multiple classes. You can just pick whichever class you want to go to. We had like 27 vendors, I think, last year. So you can save on shipping and everything else on buying your products. But it's a lot of good information, and I try to make it better every year. Becky Johnson, I put it on. So next, I guess, is I work for Mike Studer. He's a state apiarist. I cover all the, well, I don't cover all, but I try to help him cover all the inspections on the east side of the state. I try to stay in the east. I don't like going west, but I'll go wherever he sends me. There's roughly, I think, 2,200 registered beekeepers in East Tennessee and Upper East. So there's a lot of beekeepers. We cover a lot of ground. I had a question about registrations. If you registered and you haven't got your number back yet, give Mike a break. That new system is even worse than we thought. He has to make a request to get information to the private company that handles it for the government, for the Tennessee. So by the time he makes a request, they get around to doing it, they fill it, they give it back to him, and then he's got to do something with it. So it's a pain in the butt. So anybody got any questions yet? No. Everybody know what these are? New beekeepers? Active injectors. If you don't know if you're allergic, find out. This is a trainer. I'll pass it around. Basically, it's the same thing as the real one. You pull the tip off, and then you jam it into your thigh for 3 seconds, and when you're done, it just pops out. So if you want to play with it, you're more than welcome. Somebody somebody here became allergic, right?
Yes,
Doug?
Doug got a bee under his veil and got stung and had an allergic reaction.
And he's been keeping bees for how long?
Well, not a big long time, but he's been stung before, and he did cutouts and stuff like that in his time.
Yeah, you just never know when you become allergic. And sometimes I've been stung in the finger and it swelled all the way up into my chest. It hit the nerve and the venom got inside the nerve and it just went all the way up to my chest. So imagine getting stung in the neck and it swelling up. So it can be dangerous. But most of the time, I get on this gentleman right here about wearing a veil all the time. Wear a veil at least. Protect your eyes, protect your nose, your mouth. Bees see in shades and ultraviolet, so they go for the dark spots. They go for your eyes. If you get stung in the eye, you're going to be blind. So, I'm Jay Heselschwerdt. We're talking about pests and diseases tonight. So, this is just a quick kind of run through where you put your apiary, so we can kind of skip that. So, but good things to think about when you're in your apiary is all that Burke Home that you're sliding off the frames. I like to leave the Burke Home on because I took a marker and I went around the Burke Home there. And I noticed after I scraped it off, I go back in there. Thank you. You know, probably can see that better now. When I went back in there, it's like the wax has a memory to it. They built it back exactly where it was. So I scraped it off again, just seeing, and they keep building it right back in the same spot. And if you think about going into the fall, the bees, you know, they eat and they go up. So if you got two frames and you got all that Burke Home in between, they're on that bottom frame. If you scrape off that Burke Home going into the winter, now they come up to that spot, and if that cluster is a little too small, they have to jump over that top piece of wood, that dead space, that next smaller piece of wood on the bottom of that frame to get up onto the next frame to be able to eat. If you leave the Burke Home in there, they have a natural ladder just to climb over it. You're cold, you're hibernating almost, temporal, so you're not able to just move across that frame very easily. So if you leave that Burke Home in there in the fall, they have a better chance of climbing across it. But if you do scrape it off, take a bucket out with you in your bee yard, and when you scrape off that wax, put it in the bucket, take it back to the shop, melt it down, or wait till you get a bunch and melt it down. Get it out of the bee yard. Hive beetles can smell wax and honey and protein from about 5 miles away. So you throwing it off into the grass, they can smell your hives a little bit better because now it's open in the air. Sun beats down on it, really heats it up, lets those fumes come around. Anybody got multiple yards in here? Just you? Alright, if you start getting into beekeeping, which a lot of times you get bit by the bug and you want more and more and more hives, and then you start having different hives, people ask you to bring hives over their place. If you do, have a hive tool and a smoker and gloves for each yard. It's a way to decrease your spread of any kind of disease. A lot of times that disease will get stuck to your hive tool and you're carrying it from yard to yard to yard. So it's just something to do. Clean your leather gloves. I got stung a lot in these one pair of gloves and I got mad, so I hung them up in the barn, forgot about them. Started going barehanded, realized I didn't get stung because I can feel the bees underneath my fingers. With the leather gloves, you can't feel it and you squish them, they get mad for some reason and they sting. It was probably about 11 months later, I found those leather gloves in the barn. I took them back out to the hive and they started stinging those gloves. Took them off, didn't bother me. That pheromone stays inside that leather for a while, so if you have leather gloves, wash them once in a while.
Don't put them in the dryer.
Don't put them in the dryer. That leather shrinks really well. I usually wait until my wife leaves and I get the saddle soap in the sink and start washing up. That way she doesn't yell at me. Rinse off all that saddle soap and then just sit in front of the TV and watch TV for about a half hour, let it kind of dry on your hands. Then you can take them off and hang them over something to finish drying. Anytime you're in the yard, you're looking for any kind of disease. You're looking for something that doesn't look right in the hive. I know a lot of you, how many people are first time or first year beekeepers? All right, so you guys don't know what doesn't look right, right? That's why you're here. So larvae should be pearly white in there. If it's not, then there's something going on. The more you get into hives, the more you realize what's right, what's wrong, but when you open up your hive, take a sniff. Smell the hive. A lot of times it'll smell slightly different than a good hive. A good hive has a certain aroma to it. Over in Europe, they actually sell time to go in and sit, and they put a mask, or they put a drill hole with a little engine, and it pumps the air out of the hive into your face, and you put the mask on and you breathe it in. It actually helps with a lot of diseases of humans. All right, so replace your comb about every 3 to 5 years. Every time the egg hatches and the larva comes out of that comb, there's a little bit of debris inside that cell. It starts building up after a time, and it starts getting darker and darker and darker, and eventually turns black if you leave it in there long enough. Some people, they're like, well, those are my grandfather's. And you pull it out and it's completely black. I consider those small cell bees because there's so much buildup, they can't get very big. But you want to rotate it out about 3 to 5 years. Gets rid of the pesticides, gets rid of the disease in the frames. I had a test, sent it off to Beltsville. I've never treated my hives. Any kind of chemicals in there, I don't smoke my bees. They sent me back a list of 2 pages of diseases. There must have been, or not diseases, there's about, I think there was 47 different types of chemicals in my hive. The bees bring in the chemicals. There was Varroa in my hive. I've never treated for Varroa, I never had to. So they do bring it in, so you need to change out your frames every once in a while. Be careful getting nukes from Georgia. It's a great way for them to rotate those frames out every 3 to 5 years, right? They sell the frames off to you. So once you get those frames, try to rotate them out of your box the first year. Yes?
I didn't know the lab in Beltsville would analyze for pesticides. I thought they only analyzed for diseases.
Oh, they
You're talking
analyze
about the
for a
government
lot
lab,
of
right?
stuff. Yep.
Huh.
If you have more than 8 hives, did I sample yours? No?
You didn't even ask.
I'll sample yours this year. If you have more than 8 hives in one bee yard, then I can come down, I can do a sample of your hives and send it off. I take live bees, I take dead bees, send those both off. I take a wax sample, I send that off. They do this, a write-up of all the wax, the bees, how many mites are in there, how many hive beetles are in there, what all diseases your bees carry. And you'd be amazed how many diseases are actually in that hive, but they're all under control most of the time.
So that's only if you have more than 8 hives?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
That's
okay.
their restriction, not mine.
Okay. Because I sent some dead bees to them once.
Oh, you can. I mean, you
But it
can.
was only for diseases.
Well, you can send off wax to them and they'll do it, but they're going to charge you. Where if you have more than 8, we have to take 24 samples from around the state. So we take 8 from the east, 8 from the middle, 8 from the west, and we send those off so it's free.
Huh.
So if you have more than 8, get a hold of me and I can, because I'm always looking for people. I'm always behind on it. So. Adequate ventilation. You don't want too much air going through there in the winter, but you want enough that the moisture's not building up and getting stuck in there. There's different people do different things. They have a wicker box. They'll put cedar shavings on the up above the brood or on the very top of the hive because all that moisture goes up to the inner cover. I start putting just granulated sugar on the inner cover. It draws out the moisture, and they hardly ever eat it, but it's there if they need it. So when you're looking at your frames, get the sunlight, which looks like it's probably coming from here. I want the sunlight over my shoulder, hold the frame up, and then you twist the bottom of the frame slightly away because the cells are on a little bit of an angle. Sometimes you got to play with it, sometimes down here, just got to get it so you can see, use the sunlight to go all the way down. And if you have a smartphone, it's even better because I'll take pictures, and that way when I go back into the house or somewhere, I can take the veil off and I can blow that picture up. Everybody's got their veils on here, they're trying to look through that frame, the veil, it's hard sometimes, and if you get a cloudy day, it's even harder. So, look for anything that doesn't look normal. Hang on. There we go. Doesn't show up on that. Alright. So, anyways, doesn't show up on the TV. This may look really dark, but it's just the exposure of the picture. It's actually good. This is your egg at the very bottom of the cell. This is when it starts to grow a little bit bigger. And this is just a little bit bigger. There's a little bit, that's when the egg kind of lays down, starts growing. It'll start getting a little crescent. These are all eggs at the very bottom of the cell. It's very hard to see the eggs, especially if you're past like 40. I found out when I was about 43, my eyes turned overnight, and all of a sudden I was blind the next day.
It's true, man.
It is. I mean, it's, and I went to the doctor. I'm like, what's going on? He goes, how old are you? I said, 43. He goes, yep, 43, 44. Most people's eyes just change overnight. I'm like, so now I'm blind? I should be wearing glasses. I do sometimes, but this egg should be attached all the way at the bottom of the cell. And that's because only the queen can get her abdomen all the way down to the bottom and touch the bottom and release that egg and pull out. If you're having eggs on the side of the cell, then you have a laying worker and you need to fix this. Or if you have, sometimes you'll have multiple eggs down the bottom of the cell. It may be the first or second day that that queen's starting to lay. Give her time, she'll figure it out, she'll get in her rhythm. New queens are, you know, they're new to it, they're trying to figure it out. Sometimes they're like, all right, I'm laying eggs, I don't care. If it's a good queen, the workers will come through and they'll pull out that extra egg and get rid of it. I guess I do need this. I gotta click forward. All right, so this is drone brood. Excuse me, drone brood. It's got like a little dome on it. Kind of looks like a 22 bullet. And this one's kind of all over the place. The cells are a little bit bigger than this worker cell. They're a little wider. They get domed. It's because that drone's bigger. He's a fat boy. He's got to have more room. If all you're seeing is nothing but drone brood, then you have a drone laying queen or sometimes a laying worker in there. Those both need to be fixed. The queen wasn't properly mated, so she's ran out of sperm to make workers, so now she's laying nothing but drones. This is your nice little queen. A lot of times people, you know, they want to get in there and see her every single time. You don't have to see her every time. All you need to do is see evidence of her. If I have, you know, if I have nothing but capped, she hasn't been in there for at least 10 days. If I got, you know, this here, that's probably about 7-8 days old. You know, she hasn't been in there about 7-8 days. These are a little bit younger. This one's probably about 5-6 days old. You know, so if I see eggs, then I know she's been in there the last 3 days. So you don't have to see the queen every single time. You have to see evidence of her. Make sure there's something going on in there. Now this is a nice brood pattern. There's some people will call this a shotgun pattern. That is not a shotgun pattern. That's a shotgun pattern. That's crazy. If you got a queen that's laying this and there's a few cells open, sometimes the cells are just not right. You know, the dimension ain't quite right. She gets in there, she measures it before she lays an egg. If the cell's not big enough for some reason, or there was something in there that they just don't like, they'll cap off the bottom of it, and now it's not deep enough for her, so she won't lay in it. Sometimes there's a wire running down through here, and they won't do it because the wire's sitting up at the top of the cell, and she won't lay eggs in there. This one's actually pretty good resolution. So to find eggs, I look at the cappings, and then you kind of see this row here, it's a little bit younger, and then it's even younger. And right up in here, there's eggs up here. I know that because I took a picture, but there's eggs up here. If you start looking at the different age of the larva from the cappings, then you can train your eyes to start seeing that egg. And once you start seeing the eggs over and over in different frames, then you'll be able to go out to the hive, and then you can pull them out and you can see them a lot easier. Just because you get in the habit of looking for that comb and then going out. Now if it's framed with nothing but eggs, then you have no reference.
Well, also you can do the hygienics of the bees too.
Yep.
They know something's wrong with that larva and they'll pull it out.
Yep, they will do that. If you have a really hygienic queen, she has hygienic workers and they will do things a little bit different. Marla Skivic, she came up with the Minnesota hygienic. She had to back off some of her research on some of the queens because they started becoming too hygienic and they were cleaning out everything, including the eggs and larvae. And she's like, all right, I've gone too far, so she backed off. So you gotta be careful when you get into breeding queens. So Whenever you see open larva, look at it, make sure it's that nice pearly white. If you can't see the eggs, no big deal. Just look for any kind of larva that you can. If it starts turning colors, that's when we start having problems.
Can you use black light or anything to help the eggs show up? How would the bees react?
Oh, they don't have a problem with that. You can take a flashlight, you can shine from the bottom of the frame sometimes.
See,
when you're
I'm
holding it.
saying like UV, use black light
Yeah,
instead.
I haven't seen it really work outside because it's too much sunlight coming in. But a lot of times if you're shining a light underneath, then you start seeing both sides of the frame and it gets confusing. If you're inside and you're shining a light down in there, some people have magnifying glasses on when they're looking at it. A lot of times you don't need to see the eggs. When they're pointing straight up, she's been in there 1 to 3 days ago. If it falls over, it's about 4 days old. So unless you're grafting, you're not going to need to see the eggs every time. Now if you become a queen breeder, then you want to be able to spot those eggs. But you can start, like I said, you can train your eyes to start seeing that. Now this here is pretty good. This is not. This is American Foulbrood. It's kind of hard to see on 2D what I'm explaining a lot of times, but these cappings are almost flat where they'll have a little bit of a raise to them. When they start sinking down, that's not a good sign. They look a little more greasy than these do. This is just older wax that they keep repurposing to make the capping. This they repurposed, but now the little pinhole dots in here in the capping, that's where the bee goes, okay, well, what's going on? Why is that larva not looking good? They open it up just slightly, and there's only that little pinhole because they realize, oh, we ain't messing with this. We're not even going to clear it out. We're just going to leave it. A lot of times they'll just leave it because the population in the hive has decreased so much that they just can't do all that extra work. So again, good, bad. If your larva looks like this, it's good. If it starts roping, you're either with European or American Foulbrood, depending on the stage of the larva and the stage of the spores in the stomach is what makes it rope. Not all European Foulbrood will rope. Not all American Foulbrood will rope. There's two different European is okay, we can deal with that. American Foulbrood, you need to call me or Mike that moment. Get back, call us, and we will show up within 24 hours. And I'll go over that why. But yeah, can't really see, that was a bad picture. But here again, a little pinhole. They started to get, that one's a little bit more. They tore the tops off. Here's a Varroa on this one. So this is starting to break down here. So both European and American is a bacteria, and they're called Foulbrood because the brood smells foul to you. Some people say it smells like a chicken house. Other people say old socks. There's different smells, different people. The old sock smell, don't get confused with goldenrod coming in or aster coming in. That will smell like your apiaries fermenting. So don't start freaking out. We get a lot of calls in the fall when the aster and goldenrod's coming in because it starts smelling like American Foulbrood or European. The bacteria have different names, of course, but the European we can treat, and there's different ways to treat, and I'll get into that. The American Foulbrood we cannot treat. There is some new flanges out that they say cure American Foulbrood. The only problem is with the bacteria, there's different strands. Those flanges are not proven yet, even though they're already gone into production and they're selling it. Mike hasn't seen any actual research that says it cures American Foulbrood, so he's not allowing it in the state to used as a cure for American Foulbrood. They're saying it cures about 12 different types of bacteria. There's like 30 some different types of American Foulbrood bacteria. So the only way we cure it here in Tennessee is once we come out, we look at your hive, we think it's American Foulbrood, we're going to test it. And if it comes up positive, then we will euthanize your bees, and then we will burn your equipment and your bees on spot. Then you get a whole $200 back for your equipment. It's better. Up until last year, it was only $40. So, yeah, it's horrible to find it. Yes.
Some states don't destroy the bees. They have you shake the bees into new equipment or something like that, but we destroy everything. What are the thoughts on that?
Like most of the United States, their idea is, okay, we found American Foulbrood, and we're going to take the bees and we're going to shake it on more equipment, and then we'll just leave this equipment, and then we'll try to repopulate that equipment. So now you have, if it's gotten to the spore stage, now you have spores in that old equipment that you shook the bees off of, and they're just going to have American Foulbrood again. You shake the bees onto equipment. If they have enough spores in their stomach, then they're going to have a problem. Well, if they have a problem, then they kill the bees, and they still keep the equipment in use. That's why I said, if you get your nukes from Georgia, rotate them frames out as quick as possible. Terramycin is used for both European and American Foulbrood. Terramycin will cure European Foulbrood. It will not cure American Foulbrood. It looks like it covers it up. The bees look healthy, but those spores are still inside the woodenware. It's still in the honey, it's still in the pollen, it's still in the wax. It only takes 34 spores in the stomach of an adult bee to make it sick and start transmitting that disease. And when it's a nurse bee, now she's transmitting it to all the different larvae. So, difference in a quick way to find out when you're just looking in the hive, if your bee or if your larva is getting sick before it gets capped, then it's European, most likely, when comparing it to American. American happens after they capped it. It's both working on the midgut, it's bacteria, it's killing it. They both have a chicken house smell or fishy smell. American's a little more ropey than the European. They both get kind of a black scale if you let the larva deteriorate too much. Perforated, sunken cappings, they're both kind of that coffee brown. When they start off, they all start kind of turning yellow, then they get the darker and darker brown. Spotty pattern. I'll show you a picture here of the trachea tubes in a moment. But this is that, you get more and more spotty because there's a little pinhole here, there's a pinhole right there, there's a pinhole there, there. The queen has not come back to this frame. She's already getting sick. The population's dying down. She doesn't have the support system that she had to feed her, to help her, to groom her. They basically, if it gets this bad on the frame, then they've given up on that frame. They won't even use it, they'll just leave it alone, they'll move off it. The problem is when that population starts decreasing, then especially this time of year when you got robber bees, they start coming over and they start robbing out this hive. If those spores are in the pollen, if that fresh pollen they like to take, if it's in the honey, they'll start taking it back to their hive. And now you have American Foulbrood over here, or whoever robbed it. So whenever we find it, yes, we do burn your hive that day, but then I go through and I check every single frame in your apiary, and Mike gets a list of 8 miles around in every direction, and we check every single frame in every single hive in that 8-mile radius. Last year, we had some over in Spring City, and it ended up being about 27 miles long by about 10 miles wide, because I kept finding it in different apiaries. This year, they found it over in Jackson, or wherever UT Martin is. It was at the UT Martin bee yard, and one of the students went home for the summer, so he took his 2 hives to Memphis. So now we had 2 spots, because he had 4 hives he took home. 2 of the hives had American Foulbrood, so they spent months over there checking everything. So that's another reason you need to have your bees inspected before you move them, before you sell them. If somebody says they are inspected and they're selling them to you, say, can I see the inspection sheet? They should be able to give it to you. So the ropiness, basically you're taking a wood stick, or sometimes I'll grab a dry piece of grass and I'll stick it in there, and you give it about a 1/4 turn to a 1/2 turn, you pull it out, and it will You'll notice it ropes, kind of looks like a snotty booger when it comes out. It's not a good feeling when I see that, because then I go get my test kit, and that's not good. So, just more different things to look at. And
So you
more-
test on site?
Yes.
You test on site, you
Yep.
have a little company order?
Yeah, we have little test kits, and you take the sampling of the diseased larva, or pupa, actually, and you put it in a little bottle, you shake it up. I think it's 30 seconds on the American, it's like a minute on the European, and then you put it in a little test kit, which I think I got a picture in here. And there's always a control line, and you're waiting for the test line to show. And if it does show, then you're positive. If it doesn't show, then you're good. It's something else.
It's like a pregnancy test.
Yeah, pretty much.
Is it an ELISA test?
Yeah, it's the longest minute of your life. You're like, oh no, please don't go. I don't want to see 2 blue lines. I don't want to tell this beekeeper I got to kill their bees. That's horrible. I hate doing that. This is when it gets like a tar, and that's after it's broken down completely. All the moisture's out of it, and it's just this hard little piece of scale in there. There is a million spores in each one of these scales. It only takes 34 to make an adult bee sick. So just one of these scales can do a lot of damage. This is another reason don't buy any used equipment unless there's bees living in it and all stages of brood. Everybody gets those great deals where, you know, somebody's grandfather died and they're giving away all this used equipment. Don't get it. It's not worth it. Yeah, it might be a great deal, but nothing's ever free in life, it seems like. So those American Foulbrood spores, the ones up in Kentucky, are over 90 years old and they're still viable. They haven't been in a hive, they haven't done anything. It's a spore. It lives pretty much forever. Or at least 90 years that we know of. Back in the early 1800s, American Foulbrood hit New Zealand and it wiped out 97% of their hives because they didn't know how to deal with it. Now, Mike has said, no, we're going to burn hives. We don't want to deal with this. Georgia, their idea of just shaking on new equipment, that's why I think because Mike and I were speculating a few years back about this. It's like, all right, all the terramycin became a controlled substance, so now you have to get a veterinarian to come out and see your bees when they're healthy, and then you got to pay again when you think they're sick, and then they can come out there and prescribe terramycin. It wasn't like that before. You could just buy it from Dedant and they would send you the terramycin. So all those big bee breeders down in Georgia are running out of that stockpile of terramycin, and now all of a sudden we're seeing a whole lot more of American Foulbrood in here in Tennessee for the last couple of years. I think it's because they're starting to run out of terramycin. It's starting to show up a lot more in their hives. They're not sending us those healthy bees anymore. So be careful coming out. Try to buy local if you can. I know we have to wait longer here in Tennessee than in Georgia. They're 2 to 4 weeks ahead of us. You can get those bees earlier. But if you can handle it, just wait. I know as soon as it starts getting warm out, everybody wants to get their bees. I want to get my bees. So the pupa tongue, this is that tar, that scale, and it just kind of, it's actually not the tongue, but everybody calls it the tongue. It's just basically the larva stuck to the top and stretching out. But eventually this tongue will disappear and it will just be that nastiness. If it's gotten this far, you should have called me 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. A lot of times people don't even know what they're looking at because American Foulbrood is not on their mind. But I'm trying to change that because it's not. Every time I go into a hive, I'm freaked out by the American Foulbrood. So let's get into something. Are all you new beekeepers are freaked out by this yet? Okay, don't worry. It's hardly. One second. Last few years, we've had one incident of American Foulbrood every year, up until the last 2 years. You figure there's about 6,000 beekeepers in the state. There's probably about 20 to 30,000 hives in the state. And you're looking at one hive that got sick. So that's why I say most people, when you're looking at your hive, you don't think American Foulbrood because it's not that common. So a lot of these diseases, don't worry about. Yes?
A couple of weeks ago, I saw I think, was it American Foulbrood that he was saying if you get package bees, put them on new foundation, not drawn comb?
Yes.
Because we're hammering on these guys, drawn comb, you want drawn comb.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
It speeds things up, so I just want them to know, next year, if you get package bees, you want to start those package bees out on foundation.
Yes, and that's so that if they have spores in their stomach, those bees, by the time they start drawing everything out, they're gonna be dying off by the time that queen's starting to lay and get in there. It gives them a better chance of survival if they have American Foulbrood spores in them. So let's go into something a little bit easier. European. These are those tracheal tubes. I'll have a better picture here soon, but you know, you had that. If you just looked at that, that's a little better, but it's starting to turn that coffee brown, then it starts getting even darker and nastier. It happens before they cap it. So this can be treated with terramycin, or you can cage the queen or take the queen out. Basically what's going on is that bacteria is in almost every hive in Tennessee and all over. The European happens when there's not enough food coming into the hive and the queen is really taken off and she's laying like crazy, so there's more brood than the nurse bees can feed, so the brood is sitting there and scraping around inside the cell trying to eat something, anything, it's picking up that bacteria. So if you cage the queen or you pull the queen out for a few days, I suggest if you do cage her, get one of those like 4x6 screens and just stick it over the top of there. Make sure you don't put her over a bunch of cappings, because then all of a sudden everybody comes out, she's crowded. But put her over that so she only got that little area to lay. That gives time for the bees to start bringing in food, put feed on there and start feeding them, and that way they can get more feed in there and they won't have to scrape the bottom of the cells. Again, change your frames out about every 3 to 5 years. So these were right in a nice line. Just starting to get sick, more sick, even more. You can start to see the tracheal tube coming out. Here's a nice one with the tracheal tubes. It starts to twist inside. Its stomach's hurting, so like when you get sick, you always want to bend over. That larva will start to twist when it comes up in the cell, and that's it, twisting up. Then eventually it'll start breaking down, and that's when it'll get into that gooey, kind of ropey stage. But the bees can come back from a European Foulbrood. Everything can be cured except for the American Foulbrood.
Are you gonna cover PMS? Just because Langford did a great job identifying, we had some in the bee yard. Some of us thought it was European, but it was PMS, which I'd never seen before.
It's not that common, so
Are you gonna cover it at all?
no,
Okay.
because it's not that common.
Right.
I'm trying to go through all the most common things
All right.
first, because otherwise we'll be here talking. There's 122 different diseases that the bees can get that we know of, and we keep finding stuff, so if I did all of them, we'd be here all night, or all day. So I try to cover all the most common ones that happen, but
Yeah, so everybody, if you see something, you know, we've got local inspectors and they're state inspectors, they're the authority and the enforcement aspect of Department of Agriculture. But call one of us, because every time we have one of these, we get a few people over there and
oh yeah,
we're seeing it for the first time.
And where are we on getting a local inspectors class going?
Yeah, we hope to have it this fall. It's not confirmed yet. We're gonna
We
do some
talked-
other announcements here.
Yeah, we talked to Mike, when I saw him a couple of weeks ago, and he said, hey, just let me know and let's get some dates down and we'll get a class over
Yeah, we're
there.
gonna
So
try to
we'll
do it in
try to get that done.
November and then do this mid-level class in December. So we're trying to work those two out.
and Mike will let you're supposed to be a beekeeper for 5 years and have some experience behind you to become a local inspector, but even if you're not, if you're just getting into bees, it's still good to go to that class, because he'll redo this again. It's more information, he'll go into other things too. So, this is that ropiness. So, positive diagnosis, field test kit on both of them, call your state apiarist or your local inspector. Send off a sample to Beltsville or the bee lab. Please don't send off a sample of American Foulbrood. This stuff is, the spores just float around all over the place. So if you feel like you must send off a sample before you call Mike or I, or you did it, make sure when you take the frame, send the whole frame, grab newspaper, wrap it in newspaper, fold the ends in, wrap it again in newspaper, fold the ends in, wrap it again, put it in a trash bag, tie off that trash bag, put it in another trash bag, put it inside a round paper bag, and then mark all over it, American Foulbrood, when you send it to Beltsville. They don't want to deal with it any more than we do. They don't want it in their lab, so. And then anything that you have touched on that frame, burn it. I had a beekeeper, had American Foulbrood, came up there and they opened up the hive first, so I had to burn their gloves. And then they put on a new pair of leather gloves, they came back over there and they put their hands on it to look in the hive. I'm like, give me your gloves. They're like, why? I said, you touched it again, I'm gonna burn them. They came back over a third time with another pair of gloves and leaned on the hive. I'm like, give me your left glove. Well, you might as well take the right one. I'm like, just, and they start walking back over again. I'm like, stop, stand back there. Why? I'm like, I burned their jacket, I burned their gloves, I burned their baseball cap, I burned my knife, and we dig a hole and we burn everything in there and then we backfill it. Because the honey leaks out and it doesn't fully burn, so we want that honey buried. I burned so much stuff that day that I did not have to, but I don't want them taking those spores that are on their gloves. The spores can get in the propolis and the wax and the pollen, everything. If you're, that's why we say burn your hive tool, and when we say burn it, don't just stick it in the smoker, burn it until it is bright cherry red. The spores die at about 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. So just sticking it in your smoker is not going to kill it. If you got the spores in your hand and then you're puffing your bellows, guess where the spores are? They're now in your smoker, and then you use it next week in another hive, and you've just put spores in your hive. If there's only a few, that's no big deal. It takes 34. But if you constantly doing that, and it could build up over the years. So just precautions, all right? I get really scared when it comes to American Foulbrood. So if you do decide to send it off, make sure you bag it, or newspaper, bag it, brown bag again, then even put more information on it. Yes?
Can you not put those tools in a pressure cooker?
If it goes over 1100 degrees,
Well, it has pressure.
yeah, but the pressure, it should kill it, but I don't know for sure.
Does an autoclave kill it?
Autoclave does, so therefore the pressure cooker should, but there's no test done on it, and it's a hive tool, it's 12 bucks. If you think it's got American Foulbrood, burn it along with the rest of the thing and backfill. I mean, it's $12. It's not that big a deal to me. I'd rather,
Well, I was more thinking of as you're,
just as a precaution.
as a precaution, and as you go from hive to hive with your tools. Not so much if you absolutely knew you had American Foulbrood. I think you're already losing enough money. What's $12? I'm talking about as far as hygiene with your tools as you're going through
Yeah,
different hives.
And that's why I suggest having a hive tool and a smoker for each yard. Some people in the areas that we've been finding American Foulbrood, they have a hive tool for every single hive because they're just that paranoid. They don't want it. They've seen or heard what the other beekeepers went through.
They just leave that tool in the top of the hive, I guess.
Yeah, they just leave it with that hive, and some people put it on the inner cover, but then they found out the bees like the propolis. It's not quite there, so now they got to take another hive tool to break that one off. So kind of defeated their purpose of having one for every hive. But so yeah, and you guys, I know you don't want to get stung. You're going to get stung eventually. We all do. The big leather heavy gloves, they're hard to desanitize and everything else. I use the nitrate gloves, the blue ones. You can buy a box for $6 and it lasts you forever. Once you're done with them, pull them off, turn them inside out on each other, and throw them in the trash. The bees don't like to land on that slick surface, so if they do land there, most of the time they just take it back off. Yes, I've been stung once or twice through that blue glove, but it's basically when the beekeeper goes, here, and they give me a frame and I gotta grab it real quick, and then I squash bees and then they sting me. Never been stung when I've been pulling frames out, never been stung when somebody hands me a nice frame nicely. They don't like that slick surface. If you wear slacks like khakis or dickies or something, they don't like to land on those. Blue jeans, had a really hot hive, it was queenless. went out there to the beekeeper and he ran off, left me there to deal with the hive. I had over 130 some stings in my blue jeans. Mike comes out there to take a sample to make sure they're not Africanized. He doesn't get stung one time. I'm like, what in the world? Why? With blue jeans. Because they would sting me. They were so mad. They would sting me, and then they would sit there and chew on my pant leg. I would have to flick them off. They were that mad. But he didn't get a single sting. So slacks, dry fit shirts are great. They're sweat wicking when you're in the heat. And a ventilated suit's real nice. So, all right, field test. Okay, I do have pictures though. Is basically I'm just taking the larva out and I'm sticking it in. It's actually plastic bottles now. Stick it in there and you shake it up. Just read the directions if you buy these. They're like $17, $18. Some clubs go together and they buy a bunch, but they do have expiration dates. Make sure it's in date and make sure you're using the right one. The only difference in the packaging is you'll see in the very bottom corner, it'll say AFB or EFB. So it's hard to read it. And then the same thing with the expiration date. It's real small. Make sure it's in date. Because once you open them, they look identical. You take out the little squirt bottle, you squirt it in here, and then you wait for the time to go across. This is the control line. If it doesn't show blue, then you gotta retest. But that control line should always be blue. The test line is what tells you if you have it or not. If it's blue, then you have it. If it's clear, you're good. It's something else. This is what happens when we find American Foulbrood. This is what happens when we find European. We don't burn stuff. We can deal with that. We can treat that. That's the terramycin. That's the actual name. We can requeen, breaking the brood cycle. You can take all the brood out and put frames in there and let her start again. That gives all this time for all those foragers to start bringing in food, put feed on there, and they can start getting food in there. Sterilizing, fire, extreme heat, hot enough to turn your hive tool bright. You cannot turn your hive or your smoker that hot because it will just disintegrate. It's too thin. Boiling, there is one stipulation for selling used equipment in Tennessee. You can boil your used equipment that doesn't have bees in it in lye water for 30 minutes. And it's 1/3 lye to 3 parts water. It's very caustic, and if you gotta get a tub big enough to put a deep body in it, what do you do with all this caustic, nasty stuff now? Now it's hazmat. If you pour all that down your drains, you will eat up all the plastic in your house and you will have a bigger problem. The junkyards and the trash disposal, they don't want all that caustic stuff. And the big thing with why he says 30 minutes is because your wooden wire will be useless. And how do I know? I can walk up there after 30 minutes, I can push my finger right through the side of the wood. So people were like, well, I have it. Isn't there another way I can deal with it? Yes, you can deal with it. Boil it for 30 minutes, but it's useless at that point. Looks nice if you just put it on the shelf. Mike's been dealing with American Foulbrood for like 25, 27 years, so he's probably more freaked out than I am. Gamma radiation, that's the enclaves. Kentucky actually bought one, and there's one guy, he just goes around and if you have equipment, you put it in there and runs through, pull it back out. Australia deals with it as far as whenever they find American Foulbrood, they take that equipment, they put it in the enclave, and then it comes back out and they keep going. I don't think it works that good because they still have one of the highest rates of American Foulbrood in the world. So they say it works, but it's like, well, why do you keep having all this American Foulbrood if it works so well? But Mike's been trying to get a enclave for a while. He was talking with Phil Kraft when he was up there being the state apiarist. Phil was like, yeah, you can borrow it. Well, then the government found out, no, you can't transport it over state line. At least Kentucky said that, so. All right, so stuff that's a little less seen. We got it past the yucky, nasty stuff. Chalkbrood. It's called Chalkbrood because the larva, is everybody bored yet? You guys need a break? I mean, this is boring stuff. Isn't it? Okay. Scary stuff. Chalkbrood, the larva just basically it dries right out, and it becomes like a little piece of chalk. You swear you could take it down to cement and start writing with it. It is that hard. Dealing with that, requeen, more ventilation in the hive. A lot of times that queen is the problem. It's a ventilation problem. A lot of times people blame it on it. Nosema, it's pretty much in every bee in Tennessee. They have a few Nosema spores in them, but it's not that big a deal. This fumagellin, you used to be able to buy it, but they went out of business, I think, last year. And nobody's bought that business because it was costing them more to make it than they were selling it for. And it's basically because most people don't have Nosema disease anymore. A good proper diet, ventilation in the hive, healthy bees, strong colony, they're going to take care of it themselves. So people were worried about fumagellin, but we haven't really seen a big problem with it. It's more of a commercial beekeeper's problem because they're moving it all over, they're stressing out the bees, and bees are getting more problems with it. So there's Nosema Ceranae and Nosema apis. It makes your bee have diarrhea. It's a mid-gut problem again. They get sick and they just have diarrhea. You'll see the front of the hive, it gets spotty. It's basically, the bee comes out and she does a defecation run, then she goes back in. When they're sick, they don't feel like flying, they don't have enough energy, so they will just crawl up the front of the hive, defecate there, then go back in the hive, so that's where you get a lot of spottiness on the front of the hive. So, spotting on the hive, Nosema Ceranae, you don't see that very often with the spotting on the hive. They're still a little bit more healthy to fly. But it does decrease the population because they are sick bees. Sick bees don't want to eat. They don't want to feed the larva because they're just, you know, if you're not eating, you don't want to be doing anything either. So, treatment, contact us, send off a sample. Treat with fumagellin, which is really hard now unless you had some stuck in your pantry somewhere. You can, you know, if the bees will not take feed for 48 hours, mix as a drench and spray directly on the bees, so you're basically just sitting there squirting the whole hive. Ball out the frame, squirt it, squirt the other side, put it in, keep doing that. When they go to clean off themselves or clean off somebody else, they will be digesting that food, so you're helping them feed them that way. A lot of times they're just too tired to go up and eat honey, or even right there in the brood chamber to eat. And now the biggest problem we have, Varroa mites. You all know about Varroa mites? Want to hear even more crap about them? If you start pulling out larvae and it's got this many, or pupa and it's got this many Varroa mites on it, you're way past treating. All right, this is bad. This is the Varroa mite. There's no eyes on it. They are blind. This is their little mouth parts. It's like a little ramming thing. This is way past treating. You notice there's nothing around it. It's just that one. This is also too late to treat. If you're doing a visual check of bees to see if you have Varroa mite, you're behind the curve by about 2-3 weeks. The Varroa mite feed on the underside, on the fat body of the bee. About 95 to 90% of them are on the underside. So unless you're picking up all your bees and turning them over and looking at them, you're not going to see that many. When they come up on the back, they're in a questing spot and they're trying to find another bee. So they put out these two front legs, and when the bee bumps into another bee, because they're nice and congested in there, it'll jump on the other bee just basically so it can get to another part of the hive so that it can go back underneath the cappings and start breeding again. So if it looks like any of these, you're past the curve. You should have been treating a while ago. You know, this is the Varroa. This is a bee louse. These aren't that big of a deal. If you've seen these, when they first come out, they're almost transparent. And then they start turning a little more white, and eventually they start turning brown. This is, in between here is their mating area. When the female goes in, she goes in just before it's about to be capped. As soon as it gets capped, she lays her son. And then about every 20 hours on average, she lays a female, the sisters. As soon as the son's old enough and one of the sisters is old enough, they breed together. And then when the adult bee comes out of the capping, Then the mother comes out and all the females that are adult age will come out. So that's roughly about 2 to 3 on a worker, about 3 to 4, maybe 5 on a drone. So that's why drones are bad in the hive when you have a lot of Varroa mite. The bee, or the mite doesn't prefer the drone, it's just we see a lot more on the drones because they have a longer time under the capping. And then it's within about 3 days or so that they're trying to get back into capping to breed again. So on average, it's about 3 days before they go back inside another capping. So if you're using oxalic acid, anybody in here use oxalic acid to treat your bees? All right, a few of you? Do you do it 1 time, 3 times, once a week, everybody?
I did it once last winter.
Okay, so if you're using oxalic acid, that's why trachea mites came back in parts of the state so much, because everybody started going over to oxalic acid. If done properly, it kills Varroa mites very well. If done improperly, not so much. Oxalic acid only treats Varroa mites, doesn't do it for anything for trachea mites. Oxalic acid should be used when they're broodless. So early in spring, before she started laying, the queen starts laying. In the fall, late fall, when she stopped laying, there's no more brood in there. During the winter, during a swarm, that's the perfect time, because oxalic acid, when it touches the Varroa mite, it kills it. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't go through that capping. So I got to find out the name of that university. Mike showed me a study. University did once a week for 6 weeks. They tested before and after treatments on every single treatment. From the beginning to after the 6 weeks, there was a 5% decrease in Varroa mite. 5%. Because if you treat on Sunday, all those cappings that were in there, if they come out of the capping on Monday, they have Tuesday, Wednesday, on average, they get back inside another capping. You didn't kill any of those. You didn't kill the mother. You didn't kill any of her daughters. Same thing on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. On Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. There's a lot of bees, or a lot of mites coming out with those bees, and they're back underneath the cappings before you get back in there a week later and you treat again. So that's why it's made to be done when they're broodless. Different treatments for Varroa, big stand, kumquats. I mean, there's a ton of them. Make sure you're testing your hive before you treat. There's no reason to treat or waste money if they don't have Varroa mites. It's like if you go to the doctor, he's not going to start treating you for cancer if you don't have cancer. Make sure your bees have Varroa mites before you start treating them. If they do, definitely treat them. If they don't stress out the hive for no reason. Yeah, this is definitely a time to treat. When you start seeing this. This AAA labs. We don't have this in the United States yet, but it will be coming here eventually. These mites are faster than the Varroa mite. They actually, you'll see them running across the frames. The only way the bees in Thailand have figured out how to deal with AAA labs is to abandon the hive and go somewhere else and start a new drawn out wax. That way, by the time they start drawing out the wax, the mites have died off. So Dr. Samuel Ramsey, he went over to Thailand last year. He was so freaked out by this stuff that when he got to the airport, he left all his stuff in Thailand. When he got to the airport, he bought new clothes, switched in the bathroom, washed his hair in the bathroom, and then he got on the plane and left. He was not going to be that guy that brought this stuff over. He's that freaked out by it. We'll get it eventually, just like Varroa mites. You know, we got those, we get everything. It comes in on bees, it comes in on everything else. We've closed our borders down to bees. The only way you can get bees here, like the Kazakhstan, is that the right name? Those new bees that are out. They actually, Melanie flew over, took semen from the female, the queen, and the drones, and then brought it back over here and injected it in the bees. So that's how we got that new bee over here. So, trachea mites, I mentioned that. This is starvation. The bees are all head down inside the cells. They're trying to find that last bit of honey. If they're frozen in time on top of the frame, like the trachea mites gets in the tracheal and they can't breathe. So they can't shake their wing muscles, they can't create the heat, so they kind of just freeze in time. So the trachea mite actually crawls out the ear and it jumps onto another bee and then crawls in there, and they just start breeding inside the tracheal, and eventually there's so many tracheal mites inside the tracheal it just can't breathe. The starvation, bees don't like to move side to side in the winter. They only like to move up. It conserves energy that way. Sometimes there's honey right beside them and they starve. Sometimes right above them. They just couldn't get to it. The cluster wasn't big enough to get over that dead space. If the cluster is a nice big cluster, it can move a little bit easier over that dead space. So the tracheal mites, the only way you can really tell if you have tracheal mites is start killing bees by popping their heads off and pulling their tracheals out and sticking them under a microscope. That's a lot of work. There is K-wing, which is a good reason, or a good reason why you think you have tracheal mites. It's basically, bees have 4 wings. They have little grippers on the ones that hold the second pair of wings in. If they can't breathe properly, then they can't grip and their wings pop open. They also sometimes do that on a very, very hot day and there's not enough bees fanning heat out. So don't treat by just that. Make sure your bees do have tracheal mites. Some people do anyways, but the tracheal mites, they just keep building up and up inside the tracheal tube. These are eggs. So this is a good tracheal tube. This is a bad one. There's just, there's tons of tracheal mites in there. All these are tracheal mites. These are all tracheal mites. They can just start clogging it up. They can't breathe. So they'll freeze over the winter. During the summer, it's not too bad because, the queen's still making more and more bees. So it's not that big of a deal. You'll see a decrease in population in your hive. Most likely you will see that K-wing. So treat accordingly if you think, if there is a decrease in the population and you're seeing a lot of K-wings, then go ahead. If you're still seeing a large population and they got K-wing, think about what time of day is it. Is it over 95 degrees? Is that hot? Is that hive hot? But keep an eye on it. So, tracheal mites, K-wing, here we go. Anybody spot K-wing before I do? I know it's on there.
And there's another one left.
Middle right top.
There you go. Alright, so this one's got a little bit deformed wing virus, and that can be the tracheal mite too. Got a big old fat drone in here. He always looks good. They always seem to do a little bit better than the workers, but the workers work. They're abusing their bodies. So here's a little bit more deformed wing virus. Here's the K-wing a little bit more. A little more deformed wing virus. So the deformed wing virus pops up a lot more when the tracheal mite's in there because they can't breathe. They're not as healthy, and you'll have a little bit of both in there. So different treatments: methyl, Apogard, formic acid. Formic acid does a lot for a lot of diseases. It's one of those kind of overall things to treat with. So now we move into pest, small hive beetle. Have you more experienced beekeepers seen a decrease in small hive beetles this year?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have.
Yes, why?
Nice, right?
Yeah.
I believe, that's just what I believe.
Considering the past 3 years was really high.
Yeah, and I think this year it was, remember we had all that rain in the spring? And it was just, the ground was like saturated. It just,
Yes.
it never had a chance to really drain. We had so much flooding around the state. I think it was too moist for the hive beetle to breed. So therefore, because when the hive beetle, she lays eggs inside, of course, the cappings of the brood of our poor little bees. And then when it comes out, it starts to feed on the bee bread and a little bit on the honey for about 3 or 4 days. And then it crawls outside as this nasty little thing here. It crawls out and it drops into the grass, and it will either be right around your hive or up to 100, 200 yards away to get to the right soil that it can pupate in. I think the moisture in the soil was so high that it just didn't have anywhere to pupate, so eventually it just died out. That's what I can figure out, but who am I? So these are nasty. They can slime your hive pretty well. Okay, here's a hive beetle compared to the bee. It's not very big. Great way to kill them is a high tool or your thumb. If it gets to this point, you've lost your hive. This is nasty.
That's really
All right.
disgusting.
This is nasty. I mean, this is on the bottom. So, I mean, it looks nasty. I've seen it in one of my hives because I was working in Cherokee and I didn't have a chance to come back and work on my hives. I was over there all year. I lost a hive to wax moths and I lost one to hive beetles. None of my other ones. So, but the hive beetles, they can fly in one spot, one time, 17 miles. That's a long ways for a little teeny beetle. They can smell up about 5 miles in each direction of a hive. They're smelling for the wax. Remember, don't throw that Burke Home in the grass. They're smelling for the honey. They're smelling for any kind that smells like a beehive. They will fly in there. If your bees are doing a good job and they actually get in, well, if they get in the hive and then your bees are doing a good job. If they're doing a good job, they won't let them in. But, you know, you're talking about a lot of traffic coming in and out of that front entrance. So, if your bees are doing a good job, you find your hive beetles on the inner cover, right? You open up that outer cover and they're right there. The bees are trying to force the small hive beetle out of the brood area. Trying to get them out the front door, but hive beetle's like, no, there's light. I want to stay in here. This is where I can breed. So eventually with chasing around, it gets to the inner cover or your little traps or whatever you put in there. So if you open up your outer cover and there's a bunch of them on the inner cover, the bees are doing a good job. Just squish them. Some people just squish them and leave them there, or they throw them in the grass. I found that if I throw them in front of the hive, I have a tendency to have less hive beetles in my hive. It gets that pheromone out there in the area. They can smell that hive up to 5 miles away. They can smell their own dead from 3 miles away. They don't like to cross the line of death. Not that they won't, but they don't like to cross that line of death. So I just throw them in front of the hive. If you leave them in the hive, they're going to drag them out and fly them away like they do with the dead bees and any other debris in their hive that you happen to fall in there or gets in there. They're going to fly as far away as possible. So it's not doing much good. You drop it right in the grass, but it's free, it's cheap, if it works, great. If it doesn't, well, you're still going to kill them. The little beetle blaster, is that the little plastic tray ones? They go in between the frames, put a little bit of oil in there. Basically the hive beetle's trying to get away from the bee because it's been chasing around for who knows how long, and they see an opening and they duck in there. That's how those work. The frames, yes?
And if you have to disturb those beetle blasters, I found that they hide underneath that thing as well. So run your hive tool over it a few times.
You don't hear crunching.
Oh, yeah.
Crunchy crunch,
Yeah, because they don't sit flat right on the frame.
Yeah.
And sometimes the bees will propolize that because they know they're in there, but they can't propolize the bottom. So as soon as you start to pull it up, and they run down in the frame anyways. They don't work on every single hive, they work on several. Just like the unscented Swiffer pads. It's a microfiber, so the bees are trying to drag it out of there, so they're ripping it up. The hive beetle's legs are shorter, so it actually gets stuck in that microfiber. Bees will get stuck there too. I've seen hives where there's been 50 of them on there, and then I've seen other hives that doesn't work at all on them. If you do use the Swiffer pads, put where the two boxes come together, put at least a couple of edges on there so the bees don't drag it out, because we've opened up other hives and I've seen them halfway down between the frames because they're trying to drag it out. It's not supposed to be in the hive. Yeah, the little beetle blasters, Swiffer pads, there's different ways to treat them. I just found out that the hive beetles, they do bring in disease, just like the Rollaways, they bring in disease when they're feeding on the bee. Went back to that, I skipped over that. The bottom jaw of that Rollaways, it jams it up underneath the plates of the honeybee, and it releases an enzyme in there to dissolve that fat, and that sucks it back in. Well, when it's releasing, it also releases any viruses or diseases that it has, and it's going right into the bee's fat body. So when it pulls out, you know, it's left all that stuff, and now there's a big hole in there. But the hive beetle brings in a few different diseases. It also can have American Foulbrood spores on it and can bring it in. So that's why we want to attack that hive as soon as possible, that we know you have American Foulbrood so it doesn't spread. If in Tennessee here, if you know you have American Foulbrood and you don't tell anybody, and you can be fined $500 for your hive and every hive that it affects. So just let us know. We want to make sure your hives are healthy. So some different things that will help with the hive beetles: Checkmate Plus, Guard Star, the nematodes. Why is there a bunch of question mark? You have to keep saturating the soil with the nematodes, which means you have to keep buying nematodes and keep saturating them. They do eat hive beetle larvae, but you really have to saturate the soil, so I don't know if it's cost effective. Diatomaceous earth, same thing, bunch of question marks. If you put it in that Freeman board that slides underneath your screen bottom board, then the larva falls in there, and the diatomaceous earth actually will scar the larva and it dries it out. If you're putting it around the outside of your hive, that's why the question marks are there. As soon as the morning dew hits it, it becomes like a concrete paste, and they just crawl right over the top of it and keep on going, so you're wasting your money on that one. Same thing with the hydrated lime. If it's outside the hive, it rains, heavy dew in the morning, it's useless. Put it in a tray underneath your hive and it'll work much better. The traps, we just talked about those. Ventilated covers, possible, but then again, don't know. Nobody's really done research on it. There's always somebody on YouTube that says, oh yeah, this is the greatest thing in the world. I've tried it on my hive. One hive doesn't make it a real thing. If you got, you know, and I was talking to a guy last week who's a research student in England. Their test studies are always 1,000+ hives. Because each hive's slightly different, you're not going to get good results unless you have a lot of hives. So if you're doing it on 2 hives in your backyard, if it works for you, great. But don't get on YouTube and tell everybody that's the greatest thing in the world. And be careful of YouTube. Sorry. But YouTube, there's a few good people on there, and then there's a lot of bad information on there. Even some of the bigger YouTube people put out some bad information. Do not put rat poison in your hive to kill hive beetles. That's why it's not on the list. It's illegal. Yeah, I get a couple looks like, what? They tell you, there's a famous beekeeper, he says, put it in a CD case, put the rat poison in there, drill a little hole, and when the honeybees are chasing hive beetles away, they run into the CD case and they eat the rat poison and they die. It's got fipronil. It does smell good to them. They run in there, but in a dearth, it also smells good to the honeybees that are looking for food. And the honeybees will chew through that CD case and get that fipronil. It will kill the honeybees, and if they put it in the honey, it's going to kill you, or at least make you very sick. Nothing goes in your hive unless it is food grade. All right? There's nothing in the hive unless it's food grade. Wax moths. Wax moth did not kill your hive. Okay? You missed the original reason why your hive declined to the point that the wax moths could take over. This is a wax moth. It's very small. You will find them in a healthy hive once in a while. The bees just haven't got to them yet. Had a beekeeper call me last week about the wax moth. Well, there was a wax moth in there. Yeah, it was just one. Was there any evidence of anything else going on? Well, no, it was a really strong hive. Well, it slipped in through the guards. You know, it gets in there. If left long enough, they start pupating. They leave this nasty webbing all over it. There will be like little black dots. That's all the feces. They'll actually eat your wood and start making their cocoon. I see a lot of heads shaking. We've all had to deal with this at some point. I left a dead out that died. I left it out there just to see if the wax moths would take over. Oh boy, they took over. Man, they scarred up every single frame in there. They scarred up the box. There was all kinds of cocoons all over it. I took it into my bee club and showed everybody, because you're not going to transport. I mean, they're going to be everywhere. It's not like American Foulbrood. But everybody's like, what are you going to do with it? I started scraping it off. I put it in the trash bag, tied the trash bag off. I said, it's going home and it's going to get burnt. But the wax moth is the cleanup crew. Your hive has declined so much that now it's in there. It's going to dig, I don't think I got it good, no. It will dig like a tunnel behind the two cells as they're coming out. It'll dig down through here and it leaves like this little cobweb behind it. It's eating the pollen and the honey and the wax to make it, to to live and to make the cocoons for its babies. So this is almost full grown. I think I put a video, did I put a video of that of the wax moth? I don't think I put it up there last week, but I'm way behind on my videos. This is full grown.
I've got one on it.
It's about to go in this cocoon here. So when it comes out of the cocoon, it's going to be like these little girls. And there's a greater wax moth, and there's a lesser lesser wax moth. We deal mainly with the lesser. Different viruses, just so you know they're out there. These are the more common. Deformed wing, tobacco ring, we don't see that too much. Kashmir, it's out there, but they won't really tell us exactly what to look for to tell us there. So when we send off samples to Beltsville, yeah, it came back, I had Kashmir virus in my hive. And I'm like, Mike, what am I looking for? He goes, I don't know, they won't tell us. Well, then how do they know what it looks for? So slow bee paralysis, basically they look like they're just kind of moving real slow. They'll never get it out of the hive. Black queen cell virus, you won't see that unless you start breeding queens. It's in several queens, but you won't see it really. I'm going backwards, but oh well. Chronic bee paralysis is really acute paralysis. Basically, they stop losing the use of their legs or their wings. Deformed wing virus. Okay, there is two different ones. Acute bee virus. Most of these just look like they're slow bees or they're kind of drunk. They kind of walk around. Call Kathy Booker at the state. I'll give her number out here in a little bit once I find it. But call her and she will send somebody out to get a sampling of your hive. Do not touch the hive. Don't contaminate anything. Let them come out and do all of it for you. Basically what you're seeing is a bunch of dead bees on the bottom board and a bunch of them right in front of the hive. They were trying to get out of the hive. They couldn't make it very far. They died. They fell off. If you come up there during it, you'll see a lot of twitching. They kind of look like they're drunk. They're walking all over the place with nothing really trying to go anywhere. They're falling off the front of the front porch there of the hive. They're just, it's not a good feel. All right, now we're outside the hive. Sometimes the mice get inside the hive. The mice will actually eat your comb. They'll start bringing in all kinds of twigs and sticks and all kinds of stuff. This mainly happens in the winter, and you can put a 1/4 inch hardwood cloth. If it's smaller than that, the bees can't get out. The mouse, their head does not fuse together like ours does. It's always separate, so if they can push their head through there, they can get through something. I've seen mice push through a 1/4 inch hardwood cloth. Hive tool works really great to catch them in the act.
Guillotine.
But they can get in there and they will make a mess. I actually went out and inspected one guy. He's like, what's wrong with my bees? And as soon as I opened up the one brood chamber, there's a mouse between the two frames looking at me. And I'm like, here's your problem. He goes, where? I said, look right between the last two frames. Is that a mouse? I'm like, yeah, that's a mouse. But we knew as soon as we opened it up, you could smell the ammonia smell in there. It was just, you know, pee, urine. It was just nasty. So when they do this, your frames will turn all kinds of different colors from the urine, and basically just cut the wax out, bleach your frame, and let it soak in the bleach for a little bit, and then when you take it out, wash it off real well because you don't want to put bleach in your hive. The bees will just leave it alone. Skunks. Skunks are really nice. I had a film crew come out for Bristol Radio, and they're starting up some Farm and Fun TV show on PBS. They came out there, we got in the hives, bees were just purring like kittens, which I run Russians, everybody thinks they're the meanest things in the world. If you treat them right, they're beautiful little bees. They were really happy with us. We spent an hour in there in the bee yard filming, had a couple different hives open. I showed them how to make a split because when I pulled it out, the queen was emerging right then and there, and she popped right out of the cell and started climbing around. But anyways, they were just happy as heck. I go out there 2 days later doing a farm tour with some people that wanted to get into bees. They about ate us up. So I put my trail cam down there, and it caught a picture of mama coming in with 4 little babies. And they will really irritate your bees because they get in there and they start scratching on the front, and the bees come out to defend and they start eating them. It's high protein for a skunk. So to deter that, you can elevate the hives. Here in Tennessee, we found about 18 to 24 inches up. So that way when the skunk has to reach up and scratch, the bees can start stinging its throat or its stomach, and it deters the skunk from coming back. The rug strips, it's those tack strips. You put it right there in the entrance. So when the skunk goes to reach in, it pokes it in the hand. Watch out when you go to put them in, because it will poke you in the hand too. They're sharp. Tin in front of the hive, they don't like that noise. They like to be quiet. I also found chicken wire. If you roll it up and put it on there, skunks and raccoons like to be able to stand on something solid. They don't like to stand on stuff that they can see through. And of course, bears. You guys got bears down here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's been some bears
Oh.
up at Saudi lately.
They haven't got in my hives, but we had black bear spotted early spring on my place, and I was like, man.
Yeah. Now, if you have hives, make sure you put up a hot wire first, because once the bear realizes there's hives behind that hot wire, they will figure out how to get there. There was a beekeeper, I was up in towards Crossville, and he showed a picture almost similar to this with a nice big bear print in this frame, and his yard looked like this. I mean, it was all over the place. Beautiful cedar hives, and they were everywhere. He had 14, he had 3 after the bear came through. But the bear came up there, and he had the hot wire around there, and then the tin foil with bacon grease on there. So that when the bear comes up and he licks it, he took off. And he's like, yeah, had trail cam with that. Bear took off. And then he showed me a picture 2 nights later where the bear figured out where the car battery was, that was the solar power, and you see the picture of the bear going like this, and the battery's up in the air about 5 feet. He said he flung it about 30 feet over. And then he destroyed the hives. So make sure you put up your fence beforehand if you know you have bears in the area. Get the bears used to that bacon grease and running off, and then they'll realize there's nothing really good to go back there, and then put your hives in that area. It works a lot better.
And if they're hungry, they'll run right through it.
Yeah, that's true.
'Cause
We'll do that.
Jason Bragg lost 175 hives to it.
Yeah.
They got the same thing, the video, the bear just come running and ran right through the electric fence.
And the bears are actually not really after the honey like Winnie the Pooh is. They're actually after the brood, because that's where all the protein is. I mean, that's a lot of protein for the bears to go into winter with. There's the pollen down there, there's a brood, there's some honey down there. You'll see them go after the whole hive, and they'll get to the brood, and then if they're still hungry, they'll go after the honey. And that is it. Any questions? Yes, sir.
On the Varroa,
Mhm.
I had heard, thought, dreamed, had it in my head that Varroa, the pheromone from drone brood attracted the Varroa, and that's what made them like drone traps.
Yeah.
Is that not the case? It just,
They're using the bee as a vehicle, so if they do get close to that, then yeah, they're gonna try to get there, but they don't like the trachea laps will just get on the frames and run all over, and they go wherever they want. The Varroa uses the bee as that vehicle, so if the bee is going over the drone and they have a choice between the drone and the worker, then yeah, they're gonna go to the drone because it does have a longer life cycle, or a long capped area. But yeah, they're blind, they're riding along, they're getting wherever they can. I see them in worker brood, I see them in drone brood. It's not like, oh, well, there's more in the drones, there's more in the worker. It's when they're in the hive, we start opening up cappings, you'll see it in both. And when you're looking at your frames, that brings up a good point. If you're looking at your frames, pick open the cappings every once in a while and pull out some of the, sacrifice a few of them, and see if there is any mites on those. That also goes to when you're testing for your Varroa mites. There's different ways to test. There's the visual, which is not the greatest. Okay. Let me get my phone out here for a second. How many people have smartphones? Everybody? Few flip phones left. There is.
My mother-in-law.
There is an app called Bee Scanning. It charges to use it. Basically, you get in there and you take pictures of your frame, and then it tells you if you have Rollaways or not. Don't use. I mean, why pay for that? It's not good. So don't use that one. There is.
What'd you say that for?
So that you wouldn't use it. A better one is Mite Check. That one's got, you can log in there, it actually goes off to the Bee Informed and a bunch of other Honeybee Health Coalition. That one is much better. It will walk you through the difference of a sugar shake, an alcohol wash, then some other neat apps were Bee Health. That one, everything I checked so far has been right on. I haven't gone through every single disease on there, but everything I checked was right. It shows a picture of the disease and it kind of gives you a description of what it is and kind of gives you a treatment idea.
What did you say, Bee Health?
Bee Health.
Are
And
those
then-
two free, Mite Check and Bee Health?
What's that?
Are those two free, Mite Check and Bee
Yes.
Health?
And then there's Boxy Bee. Basically, it keeps the idea of your hives and your, you know, if you got a lot of hives, if you got one or two hives, most of the time you don't forget what you did, but you start getting hives like Langford and I, you start forgetting which hive was what going on. Or it just, that one's also nice that you can keep track year after year.
Boxy, as in B-O-X-Y?
Yeah,
Okay.
Boxy Bee, all one. Those are in Android, I don't know about iPhone. I hate iPhones, but, sorry. Everybody thinks iPhones are the greatest thing. They only have like 23% of the market. Almost everybody has Androids, but anyways, I'm a computer programmer, don't get me started on that. The alcohol wash versus a sugar shake. You're taking about 300 bees, take them off the brood frames. Don't take them off the honey frames or anything, you're getting adult bees. You want the brood area.
Thank you.
You get about half cup worth is about 300 bees. You put them in a little mason jar. You can put sugar in there, screw on the lid, shake them up, get them all really mad at you, and you're trying to knock the mites off. Then you shake the sugar out on a white piece of paper or a cookie pan or something that's white, and then you count how many mites you got. Throw some more sugar in there and shake it up again, and I bet you get a few more mites off there. It's not the most reliable, but it's better than a visual. The best one is the alcohol wash. Same thing, 300 bees, put it in a mason jar. They do sell like Mite Check and all these other different gimmicks, but a mason jar is free. You probably have one anyways. Put some alcohol in there, cover the bees, shake it up real good. That will dislodge almost every single mite that is on the bees. Then drain out it, and then sit there and count how many mites you have. So you want to do it before you treat to make sure that you need to treat. No use wasting money on it if you don't have Rollamite, and don't, you know, the chemicals will affect the hive. If you do have it, definitely treat for mites. Definitely check going into the winter because you want those nice fat bees that they have a lot of stores that they can get over the winter. Remember, the mice eat on the fat, so if they have less fat, shorter their lifespan. So you want nice fat bees going in the winter. And then after you treat, wait a few days and test them again. Now, the sugar shake will not kill your bees. It'll make them mad, but it won't kill them. The alcohol wash will kill your bees. A lot of people don't want to do that. They don't want to kill their bees. But you're sacrificing 300 bees versus 50,000 bees. You still have 49,700 bees in the hive. Sacrifice 300 bees. It's not that big a deal, okay? And if you're worried about losing 300 bees, then you need to combine that hive with something else because they're not going to survive anyways. If you're going to notice 300 bees missing. And I always wondered if, you know, if you got a nuke, you don't want to take 300 bees out of there and compare it to a hive that has 2 brood boxes and 3 boxes of honey. That's a lot more bees. You know, there's going to be a slight difference in percentage there. You're looking at 2% is okay, 3% you need to treat. Anything higher than 3% of the bees, you need to treat your hive. I think, anybody got a question? I know I ramble on.
We did sugar shakes this year with the mentorship class, and so we used the instructions on an app that Jennifer had showed us where you shake the bee so hard, you know, like the cell phone thing. It was just bee mash in there. It was liquid contents nearly. It was a disaster.
So you might do alcohol
Two
wash.
Well,
bees,
I killed
nothing.
And that's what I'm sending out to everyone is, in retrospect, should have had a bottle of alcohol with us, so if that
Yeah.
happened, just pour alcohol on them
Yeah.
and switch to an alcohol because you killed the bees anyway.
Yeah,
Right.
so,
But we didn't, we just killed the bees.
Yeah, and they have an app also that shows you how hard you gotta shake it.
Yeah, we did
I think
that.
that's actually the one,
Yeah, it's
that
too
first,
much.
second one I gave you.
It was too much shaking.
It's-
We did it based on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, yeah, you shake for a minute, let it settle for, with the alcohol, you shake for a minute, get your arm some rest, and then shake for another minute. You gotta dislodge those mites. The mites are actually shoved up underneath the plate, so you gotta really shake them. And, yeah, if you're shaking sugar shake that hard, yeah, you are destroying a lot of bees. And, but it is neat, you can shake it really good, and then you can smell what the alarm pheromone smells like, because they're giving it off real well. So, yes.
On the bee kill, Jennifer gave a phone number the other day. It says contact 615-837-5148. Is that what you have?
I believe so.
Is that for Kathy Booker? That's what I was
Yes.
gonna ask. Can you give that number again, please?
I'll come.
Don't have it. Let's see. My phone crashed a while back.
Figure it out.
Well, I crashed. Yeah, I know, Android, right? No, I dropped my phone a lot in the bee yards and
Testimonial right there.
parking lots. What finally killed it was I was in the rock quarry, and it was sitting between my legs in the seat. When I got out, it did 2 flips and it landed face down in the rock quarry. I picked it up and the whole screen was shattered. But it was I only lost 3 days worth of contacts and 3 days worth of stuff because Google uploads everything, so. Let me find Mike's. I know Mike sent it to me at least a few times. Let's see, sorry for the delay. Any other questions while I'm trying to find that?
Yeah, Kevin and I did the thermal treatment on his eyes. What's your view on the thermal treatments?
I don't have enough information on them, I haven't seen it done enough to really know if it really works or not.
Yeah,
There's a 3 degrees difference between killing Varroa mite and then sterilizing your queen, so.
that's what we were worried about on the first one we did, because we were doing the second one yesterday, and went back in, and first 6 or 7 frames we pulled out was just backfill, no larvae, no eggs, and we finally got to the frame that she was on, and she just started laying again. So my theory is you're not only getting the mite kill, because there was probably about 100 mites on the drop board. You're not only getting the mite drop from killing the Varroa that way, but you're also getting a brood break.
I did the heat treatment on 2 of my Langstroths about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I went in 3 or 4 days ago, and she was laying, and there was all phases of larvae and open.
Yeah, because that's what we
Open
found. The
brood.
frame that she was on,
Yeah.
she had just laid eggs.
Yeah. And I didn't see them dragging a lot of brood out. There was some brood that they drug out, some young bees. Now, they say that that was because there were Varroa on those bees, but I checked every one of those and I didn't see any mites on them. So I don't know if they just died from the heat because they were close to the heater or what. But that was a handful. It wasn't 1,000, something like that. It was just a handful.
All right, so Kathy Booker, Department of Agriculture, Division of Consumer and Industry Services, is Kathy.Booker, Booker, at Tennessee.gov. Her phone number is 615-837-5133. And
Kathy with a K or a C?
with a K.
And then Tennessee.gov is TN.
TN.gov, sorry,
And what division is she again? Division of,
Agriculture.
agriculture,
yeah, but you said something after that, consumer.
consumer services and stuff. She's basically the pesticide person. When somebody wants to come into Tennessee to be able, like, my local power company, Powell Valley Power Company, they hire people out of Alabama and Georgia to come up here and spray the power lines to kill all the weeds underneath it and to kill my bees. So they had to go through Kathy to get a permission to spray here in Tennessee, which I lost 34 hives 1 year. I had 38 hives to pesticide they sprayed. The next year they came through, I built the 4 that actually got through the winter. I built them back up to 18. They came, they sprayed and killed 14 of those hives. So those 4 hives again, I went through, built them up to 37 the next year, and then trachea mites killed 27 of them. So I'm not having very much luck the last 3 years. So I've never had to treat until trachea mites. I will be treating this year, so.
And so, you're treating with oxalic acid, or I'm sorry, formic acid, but you've never treated mites before. You never had to.
Now Varroa mites.
Why are you choosing to use the formic acid on the tracheal mites?
Because the formic acid will kill trachea mites. That's the only thing I'm really treating for. I don't have a problem with Varroa mites. I sent my test off to Beltsville. I sent them, instead of 300 bees, I sent them 1,065. They actually counted them. I have one Varroa mite in there. The way I deal with Varroa mite is when, in the spring and in the fall, when the bees are building up, that's when the Varroa mites are building up. If you have a breed of queen that stops laying during a dearth, you get that natural brood break. The mites don't have any place to breed, so they all start dying off. In the spring, I do my splits, and I take the queen, I move her out, I put her in a new spot. It helps with swarming versus leaving her in there. I tried to leave her in there and move bees out. I like to move her out. Langford might have a different idea. But I move her out to new equipment. It smells new, it smells like a new home, and I think it helps with the whole swarming agent. She knows she's left. All the bees with her are nurse bees. I shake in there. All the foragers go back to the original hive. The foragers realize we lost a queen. They start raising a queen.
Wait, you said you move her out, you put her on foundation?
I put her on foundation.
Okay.
I don't give
So
her
you break
room
her
to lay.
brood, so you break her brood cycle?
Yes.
And then you
I
pull the
put-
queen out.
I put pollen and honey in there with her. I make them clear out that for her to lay or to draw foundation. By the time they start drawing foundation, you know, it's at least a few days before she starts laying. Most mites live about 10 days before they just die in oxygen. So it takes about 10 days to get cappings. So if I make it longer for her to have a chance to lay, then it's a longer period for those Varroa mites to survive. In that original hive, now I'm making them raise a queen, so yeah, we got a bunch of cat brood in there and other larvae that will be capped, so they do have a chance to continuously breed in there. But by the time the queen gets, you know, queen cells made, or if I find queen cells in there, I'll pull her out, but by the time she comes out of the queen cell, her exoskeleton, her wings hard enough to go mating flight, another few days for mating flight. She comes back another day or so before she gets in her group to start laying, another 10 days before you start having cap. You got about 20 to even more, 30, 35 days before there's cappings. There's a lot of Varroa mite dying, so I've never had to treat for Varroa mites. But if I do find Varroa mites in there, I will treat. I still do alcohol wash. I still want to find out if I have Varroa mite. It's not going, they're okay, they're all right, you know. No, I want to know they're all right, so.
Do they have to replace your bees or anything if they kill them off like that?
No, I spent about, I think it was about $25,000 in lawyer fees, and they finally came down to, they were giving me $300 $300 for my filing fee for all this problem if I signed a no talk bad about them. I'm like, $300 for a buyout? I'm like, no, screw you, I'm talking bad about you guys, Powell Valley Electric, every damn time I get a chance. They killed, what, 48 hives and all that equipment.
And it wasn't pesticides though, it was herbicides, true?
They
Or not?
sprayed with herbicides, pesticide, and fungicide. I'm like, why are you spraying a fungicide in there? But they claim they didn't, but I talked to the sprayers and they're like, yeah, that's what they told us to spray. And I went down there and I talked to them, I said, so I finally got the sheet